book. It was challenging, the first one.
Because he wanted to be in the place of love.
Somebody came up with the idea.
And he was 100% accurate in his prediction.
Selenium, iodine, or calcium, you don't have to know any of that stuff. All you have to be able to do is chew.
About Obama, what about Sarah Palin? Ooh, what am I going to do? Sean, help me, what am I going to do? Why do people come see me? Huh? Handsome, charming, I know, I have all those things, right? But you know, I think to myself, come on in, it's okay, have a seat. I think to myself, so many people, you're looking for answers, you're asking questions, you're looking for answers, you're looking for things outside yourselves, you're looking for things inside yourselves. You're meditating, you're praying, and it just seems as though the world's falling apart, right? Yeah. Right? So you talk to guys like me, and I get up on my soapbox and I howl about America and about democracy and about martial law and how George Bush is kind of an idiot, and at the same time he's managed to single-handedly, this idiot has managed to completely tear up your Constitution and change your government and spend all your money and get us involved in a couple of wars. Doesn't sound like an idiot to me. Sounds like a guy who knows exactly what he's doing, don't you think? Yeah. And so I think to myself, you know, what do I do? If I was Moses and I saw a burning bush and I asked the question of the Tetragrammaton, of the Hashem, of the El Shaddai, of the Adonai, if I said, what can I do to help my people? And the bush said, you need to go out and talk. You need to go out and see what people want. You need to give them the information. You got to press the envelope. You got to expand their minds. You got to think, which makes you dangerous. And I think to myself, well, why me, God? Why not? And he says, because you like to get up in front of people and talk, stupid. Because you get to be on the radio. Because you write a newsletter. Because you communicate well. And why not communicate the truth instead of a bunch of crap that they pass for truth on the media today, right? And so I think to myself, you all want the answers, and we all want to know about the inflation and the economy and the depression and about politics and about the stock market and about the Russians and about Europe and about the European Union and about the Antichrist and the false prophet and Revelations and Ezekiel and the wars of Gog and Magog. And I think to myself, what the hell do we do? And the one thing I think of, to quote an old-time movie, is at first, you got to get mad. And first you got to say, I'm a human being, God damn it, my life has value. And I want all of you, everybody stand up, get up, everybody stand up. You're going to stand up now. I want all of you to stand up. You don't have a window, but if you had a window, I want you to go and open it, stick your head out and say, I'm mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore. Say it, 1, 2, 3, I'm mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore. One more time, I'm mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore. Sit down. Because God bless America just had to be said, don't you think? It just had to be said. You got to get up on a soapbox. You got to talk to Tom Brokaw. You got to get in the Obama, McCain, Palin face and say, I'm mad as hell. I'm not going to take this anymore. What a bunch of crap you people are spewing. I watch the debates, and I keep thinking, you know, I've seen puppet shows in France that are better than this. You know, and I listen to McCain, and every time he opens his mouth, he talks about how many people he's going to kill. And then I listen to Obama, and he opens his mouth, and he talks about how much my money he's going to spend. And then I listen to Sarah Palin, and I'm like, huh? What? What's she talking about now? I just know she's kind of folksy, eh? You know, and she's just like pumping and not using any G's at the end of her words, you know, with Joe Sixpack. And I'm like, do I want Joe Sixpack running the country? Do I want Joe Plummer running the country? Or do I want the best and the brightest that America has to offer? And then I think, how do we get these two idiots, is what I start thinking to myself. So anyway, so just to talk about that, there's obviously panic. There's panic in the markets. There's panic in the streets. You can feel it. A lot of you are having dreams about it. A lot of you are, your stomachs are fluttering and you don't know why. There seems to be like a tension, like a caving in on you. And I kept saying from the beginning, I remember a year or so ago when I talked about a lot of this, and I said, look, we're going to see oil at $150 a barrel. I think it hit 150. I got a bunch of flack because it only hit 142, I think, so I missed it by $8. I talked about, I'm sorry, what? 147. Went to 147. Oh, I missed it by $3. Sean Morton's a fraud. He missed oil by $3. He's a fake. He's a fake. And then I talked about the stock market, and I said, years ago, and kids, you got to trust me in this because you can go back, you can buy the CDs that have all this stuff, but 10 years ago I talked about the stock market going to 14,500, and that when that happens, we would develop a Jenga economy, that the stock market was going to go up as companies bought everything else, and as the power base, you being the power base, began to decay, these companies were going to just start to go up and up and up and up and up, and you'd have this Jenga economy. Anybody play Jenga? You guys ever play Jenga? You know what I'm talking about? It's a game. It's a bunch of little wood sticks, and you try to pull one out and put one on the top. Isn't that what our economy's like now, specifically? You listen to Benjamin Bernanke, Ben Shalom Bernanke, who says, oh, we have $1 trillion set aside for emergencies like this. And I'm like, what you do, put a rope around a forest so you can cut down the trees to print the money? Is that what you're doing? Because that's where the money comes from now. They just print it from out of nowhere, from out of nothing. And finally, when the house of cards finally collapsed, everybody's surprised because it's not based on anything. You don't have an economy that actually processes anything of real value. Hey, how you doing, sir? Good to see you. Just have a seat right up front there. Just wander around all you want. You know, no, sit back there, please. No, absolutely. It's just fine. I love New York. I love it. I love it. And so I thought to myself, you know, I'm coming to this fantastic show, and this is one of the best Newlife Expos in a long time. The speakers are fantastic. Mark's really broken his back to get the best people in there. And for the past, gosh, I've known Mark for 20 years now, 15, 17 at least. I just think that I've had this unique opportunity because I'm fans of all the people that talk on the show. When I had my radio show, I got to talk to these people and get their books. And when I had the TV show, I got to interview people to get their ideas and their concepts out there. I'm constantly voraciously reading everything that I can get my hands on to act as a vortex of this information to try to then process it and filter it so that I can get the best and the brightest of things out to you as to what can be done. And then I started thinking about, man, I'm going to New York, and they're talking about 300,000 jobs lost in just the financial sector down on Wall Street. They're talking about the stock market collapsing. At the same time, I just have to tell you that I'm getting communications from every different angle. I had an Ojibwa shaman from Canada call me to say, Mo, the end of October is going to be very bad. And I had a Yakima shaman from Washington talk to me about dreams of the moon going red and a beam of light coming from out of the east. I had a guy who channels Pleiadians come up to me at the San Francisco UFO conference to give me stacks of paper to say, look at this stuff that I predicted about what's going to go on as far as the presidency and whatever else. There's Jewish rabbis in the Kabbalah that have talked about how October 20th on Monday is going to be another giant shift, the next phase. By the way, these same Kabbalistic rabbis who predicted the war in Afghanistan to the minute, literally to the day, who then say that the next phase of Gog and Magog is going to happen on October 20th. I did remote viewings back in March for some guys that write reports for the House and Senate Intelligence Committees. And I told them that there would be incursions into Iran in April, which there were, which Navy SEAL guys went in and rigged the place with bombs along the shore, and that we would see October 23rd as being a panic point, not only in the stock market, but also as far as a possible attack in the Middle East. We'll see if that happens. Because here's the interesting thing, and here's the challenge. Whether or not you're dealing with the military that deals with what we call holographic projections of the future, and they're talking about not just next quarter, not just next year, 10 years down the road, 15 years down the road, 20 years down the road, 50 years down the road. Imagine now thinking in terms of 50 years down the pipe of what this planet's going to be like, how the future is going to project, and what it's going to be. And if you all had the power to do something about it, what would you do? How do you play God? Because the one group of people that you would help, you ultimately hurt somebody else. One group has a Messiah that's the Antichrist to somebody else. There's 192 separate countries, I think, on the earth right now, maybe a little more than that. And every single country has its own definition of good or evil. Every definition of who's the Christ and who's the Antichrist, who's the Buddha and who's the devil. Do you understand how... Can you imagine coming from outer space and looking at this planet trying to say... What do we do? Because you help one group of people, you hurt another group of people. If you give them technology for power, they're going to pick it up, and it's like giving a .44 Magnum to a 5-year-old in the sandbox. If you give them healing energy, well, what happens? You have companies that grab that energy, either make it obsolete or charge all kinds of money for it. And at the same time, how do you actually live in a world when you go to one person and it's not in your best interest? If I go into a shop and the guy goes, oh yeah, my products are really crap. If you go across the street, there's another guy that sells a better product than me. That goes against your self-interest, isn't it? Is there a way to create a world where there's enlightened self-interest, where everybody profits from the best and the brightest, again, for what this is? So when you're looking at what's going to go on the next week, I thought that this expo, this weekend in October, is the end of cycles, is the beginning of cycles, is the beginning of so many things and the ending of so many things, that I literally thought that my being able to talk to you now, and also through the internet for these people here, and if you're watching the DVD or watching this tape at some point in the future, Hong Chi Ganwa, my Chinese masters. Yeah, okay, never mind. That's in the future, mind you. I'd just like to say, yeah, because you guys don't think it's funny, because you're like, oh, that's true, holy cow. So, what can I do to help you? I think to myself, I've tried to focus a little bit more on healing. You preach the gospel, heal the sick, the 2 commandments of our Lord Jesus Christ. And so the idea is that preaching the gospel and healing the sick. I went to Israel this year, and I spent a week there in Israel. They're very grumpy people, the Israelis, by the way. And you're driving in a cab, and they're like, oh, George Bush is the greatest president America's ever had. I'm like, he's probably the greatest president Israel's ever had. I'm not so sure about the United States. And you're more than welcome to keep him. He's here now. So if you'd like to trade, I'd be happy. Well, you want my opinion? Not particularly. I give it to you. My opinion is John McCain. John McCain will be next president of the United States. I'm like, oh, great. Okay, well, that's a lot of fun. And it's. I was talking to a couple of Israeli folks that sell some products here, and I go, why are the people in Israel so grumpy? And the guy goes, well, that's because they watch the news all the time. And I'm like, really? What is it? OVN, the Oy Vey network? Is that what it is? It's like, because Oy Vey, every hour on the hour, and Oy Vey's when it breaks. Oy Vey! The news is all bad. Oy Vey! Very interesting place. Matter of fact, we got a tour from a guy, Tal Emil, who was a former Mossad, a major, actually, in the Mossad. And he's like, oh, yes, here's some pictures. Here's my son who's in the army. Here's my daughter who's in the army. Oh, here's me torturing some Palestinians. Ah, good times, good times. Ah. And he wasn't kidding. There's like a guy with a blindfold with a bloody nose, and he's like posing with him like this. And I'm like, wow, this is a harsh country to be in, because you're surrounded. There's only 7 million people there, and you're surrounded by about 1 billion screaming people that hate your guts and want to drive you into the ocean. So it was very, it was a very interesting, unique thing. And I've been so many places this year to get a perspective. We went to Peru. Actually, I led a tour to Peru, which was fantastic. We went to Peru, Machu Picchu, went to Easter Island, went to Chile, went to Lake Titicaca, just because it's fun to say Titicaca, which is right next to Lake Booby Poo Poo, which is all right, it's a cheap shot. But you're not paying for the comedy, folks. And after the tour to Peru, a close friend of mine, coaches at USC, had some time off and said, hey, can we go to Egypt? So I went to Egypt for a week, and then went to Israel after that. And then I went up and I taught at the International Health and Integrated Sciences, nailed down my PhD in philosophy with therapeutic counseling. Hey, there you go. And up in Canada, so I taught in Montreal for a couple of weeks up there. And then I got accepted to the Oxford program at Exeter College for the College of Astrological Studies. So I was there for the month of August, and I studied with Rob Hand, Michael Luton, Bernadette Brady, Judy Boehm. It was literally like being Harry Potter and going to Hogwarts for summer school. I'm not kidding. Rob Hand, you put a pointy hat on him, he's Dumbledore. There's a guy named Brian James there who looks just like Professor Snapes. There's Claire Martin, who runs the school. Spitting image of Maggie Smith, who's like, hey, Paulson, hello, how are you? Michael Luton looks like that little troll guy with the, the big things going, and the winner of the Goblet of Fire is... Anybody know Michael Luton?
Yes.
No, Michael Luton, who's like, you better listen to me, because if you don't listen to me and you're not become good astrologers, then you won't get any clients, you won't get any money, and then you'll die. You'll die. You'll starve to death. Ah! That's Michael Luton. It's a perfect impression of him. So it's literally like Hogwarts, but after I got my ass kicked in a couple of matches of Quidditch, boy, this really is okay. Never mind. I fell off my broom a couple of times, but this is what's going on planetarily. I mean, it gave the perspective of all this traveling and going places. I spent my birthday in Houston, which is great because I was born the same day as NASA on October 1st. At that time, I turned 60 this year. And see, I look great. I really turned 50. You're going, oh man, I'm sorry. How you look great for 60. 50. Oh shit, man, what happened to you? So it's like, it's always great to come back to New York with like, hey Sean, how you doing? God, you're fat. And I'm like, oh. But I could lose weight and you'll still be stupid. So, come back. So going all these places and learning all these things across the United States, across the world. I mean, here I get the perspective of the Native Americans down in Peru, and then I get the perspective of the Canadians, which is completely unique, believe me. Especially when your major imports are maple syrup and snow. So it's so when you go there and you then get to interact with a lot of healers and a lot of people from France and a lot of people from Canada, and their whole perspective being kind of like the quiet attic above the noisy party of the United States, and then going to England at the same time. Which is kind of interesting because astrology is not really that respected in England. Some of the students at Exeter, I was saying, "Are you here with the astrological college?" And these girls would go, "Oh God, no! Oh no! Oh God, no! You're with them? You're part of the crazy people who's taking on school over. Oh my God!" And I was making a joke earlier. I dated a poshy English girl, and I thought she wanted me to play with her ears all the time, and because she always said is, and I realized she was saying yes, is. So, poor girl. So what do I tell you of all this about the changes that are coming? What do I talk to you about after studying the Mayans and studying the Peruvians and hanging out with Inca shaman and Peruvian shaman and hanging out with the masters of astrology and the masters of the stars? The biggest thing that I guess I have to offer you, and my biggest concerns and my greatest hopes, have to do with, again, that the future is not going to go to the strong but to the curious. That's why I came up with, I think, therefore I'm dangerous, because it's all about conform, control, consume, which is the constant things that are they're being beaten into you by movies, by television, by popular entertainment, by the media. Control, conform, consume. But the idea is that if you just think through it, you can start poking holes, because it's a very thin spider web of lies and reality that they put over you, that the matrix consists of. And all you have to do is start poking at it. And the minute you start poking at it, and then you start poking at another thing, and then you start peeling this back, the whole spider web starts to roll back. That's why all this stuff that we talk about in metaphysics is so wonderfully, dynamically interconnected, because you have to have a ferocious curiosity. And that ferocious curiosity has to have no fear, because eventually you come up against that laughter curtain, which you guys know what I'm talking about. It's getting, if you'll notice, that laughter curtain is getting thinner and thinner and thinner as we've been right more and more and more. And now people are starting to wake up from this amazing drunk that they've had for 5,000 years, I would think. And now that they're starting to wake up from the illusion, they're starting to come to people like you, because whether you know it or not, the people in this room are the best and the brightest. The people in this room are at the cutting edge of thought and spirit and technology. You all have various and diverse opinions. You're all going to take away what you need from all of the great speakers here. But it gives you a sense of oneness to gather here. You're not locked in your rooms and your caves in front of the internet, doing what you're doing, I-aming people. It's the real challenge has been is that entertainment and the internet, though it has popularized our belief systems and structures, has divided us in such a way that it's been difficult for all of us to gather in harmony. It's like, Christ said, where two or more of you are gathered in my name, there shall I be as well. Well, kind of hard to do. Could Christianity survive in an internet culture where two or more people never get together unless they're playing Halo over the internet? It's By the way, never play Halo on the internet, because you wind up just getting your ass kicked by a 12-year-old in Des Moines somewhere. So it's never any fun. So I think, therefore, I'm dangerous means that once you start thinking and you begin to realize that the shroud and the web of lies they've laid falls apart so easily, because you literally have not only a government that figures that they can get away with lies, but a government that's just become lazy about it. If you're going to tell a lie, at least tell a good lie. If you're going to tell a lie, and remember, the point of a lie is to repeat that lie over and over and over again. And if I'm endowed like a stallion, simply repeat the lie over and over and over again, I'm endowed like a stallion, and I keep telling you what I want you to know, I'm endowed like a stallion, and you keep listening to it, I'm endowed like a stallion, pretty soon you're going to think to yourself, wow, that guy's endowed like a stallion. There you go. See, there you go. Okay, small pony, maybe, but that's why this all interconnects, and it all interconnects because no matter where because it is a matrix, and because it's a matrix, it's holographic and holistic. So no matter where you start peeling back the wallpaper, if you will, whether or not you want to start at UFOs in Area 51, whether or not you want to start at covered up technology, whether or not you want to start at covered up health technology as an example, cures for cancer, various types of diseases, whether or not you want to start at 9/11 and that the government's telling you that basically the laws of physics in the 21st century are different than the laws of physics in the 20th century. In the 20th century, you couldn't knock over buildings with airplanes, but apparently it's easy in the 21st century. The idea is that the more you start poking at this, you notice how it leads to one thing and another and another and another. So once again, the future goes not to the strong, but to the curious. So I thought to myself again, this is a crux point. Let me try to give you some good news. I mean, what I'm going to talk about, I've got a whole presentation in the workshop, which I know every single one of you will come to. And the idea, and why Mark and I have been such great friends for such a long time, is that Mark has really pioneered so much of these. He just keeps plugging, he keeps going. He's gone through a lot of really, really harsh personal things in his life, but he's kept shows going here, he's kept them going in Florida, to really be on the cutting edge of all of this. And what this shows is that all of you are curious enough to be able to show up, take in some information that may be a little crazy, maybe a little out there, but information like this, if you think how crazy certain information was 20 years ago that's now accepted by everybody else. If you think of in 1963, if you tried to say anybody but Oswald shot Kennedy, you were basically pillared and dragged naked through the streets in a barrel full of nails. And I'm saying that 40 years from now, there will be as many people who think Arabs knocked down the World Trade Centers as they think one guy shot Kennedy back in 1963. So the idea is that the truth is always on our side. It just takes, like they say, a lie gets around the world in a shot at the speed of light, but while truth is trying to put its boots on. And the idea is that truth has been putting its boots on for a while. And we just have to understand that when you're walking through, the poop that you need the boots for, that, don't be dragged down by the negative. Don't be dragged down by, I don't want to fill my mind with the negative. Oh, he's going to talk about prophecy and there might be a bad thing. Oh, I might create that bad thing in the future. Well, that's like saying to a bunch of kids playing on the train tracks, well, there's a train coming, you better not play on the train tracks. Or you better not go in there, that's sewage. Or you better not do this, to warn a child about what's going on. So when I tell you what's going on, the point of prophecy to begin with is to be wrong. Do you get me? The point of prophecy is to be wrong. You know who the worst prophets were in the Bible? Jeremiah, Isaiah. You know why? Because everything they freaking said happened. Nobody listened to them. Probably the best prophet in the Old Testament was probably Jonah. Why was it Jonah? Because even after he didn't really get swallowed by a whale, but he got in a boat called the Great Fish, and he finally gets spit out in Nineveh. He goes to the middle of the town. Imagine a guy today going to the middle of Times Square, taking off all his clothes, burning them, covering himself with ash, putting on a bag. Actually, it's New York. That wouldn't be too weird, would it? Putting on a bag, and for 3 days walking back and forth across Manhattan, saying, repent, repent, repent. Go back to the Creator, go back and pray, go back and meditate. Then he sets up shop on top of the Empire State Building, waiting for the city to be destroyed. And what would happen if saucers or flying gourds, as they were called, began to position themselves around the city with this prophet who told you that you were doomed sitting on top of the Empire State Building? What would happen then? And what would happen if in that same breath, those ships and those saucers that were going to destroy your city then suddenly just went away? Well, all the people actually in the times of Jonah, in the time of Nineveh, Jonah, who hated the people of Nineveh, they made him the king of the city. They grabbed him and said, hey, you're our hero. You warned us beforehand, and we took the proper thought and action to be able to avert a catastrophe. This is making some sense? Yeah, so when I tell you what's going on, all I can tell you now is that when I talk to people in the government, people in the military, anybody that other remote viewers, even people who are getting channeled information, believe me when I tell you, nobody knows what's going on. They use what's called a super advanced program of webbot programming. Webbots are these little things that they send out to catch keywords to create sort of a holographic image of what the future is going to look like. They use what they call neural net programming as well, which is, once again, going out over computers to create holographic models of the future. And you know what? About a month ago, every single one of those models just jumped off a cliff. Just jumped off, like the little girl in Poltergeist who dives into the white noise of the TV. That's what the future looks like. So when we do Bible codes, as an example, and I've taken a lot of flack for doing Bible codes. Well, look, I've always said that a Bible code gives you a prospect of something that's going to happen. If you go down this road, there's going to be a tiger. If you go down that road, there's going to be a lion. If you go down that road, there's a bunch of elephants. You're standing at a nexus point in time. And because at this election, and we sort of say this about every election, but because at this election we're on the precipice of financial collapse, we're on the precipice of what possibly quite be another Cold War, thanks to our good buddy Mr. Bush and Mr. Putin at the same time. We're at the precipice of possibly going into major conflicts with the Chinese and the Russians over not only Iraq, but over Georgia, over Eastern European countries joining NATO, over everywhere that Putin, and let me give him a little credit here, has pulled back his missiles and pulled back Russian influence. Bush in America and the corporatocracy has then moved in and put missiles there and pointing them at Russia. And Putin is like going, WTF, man, what's going on? If you're going to do that, I'm going to put some missiles back in Cuba, and we're going to put some backfire bombers in Venezuela, and we're going to put some missiles on the border of Turkey just to counter that. So guess what? After all this stuff to be able to make peace, we're right back where we were in the Cold War with, instead of a bunch of guys hiding in caves using cell phones to attack America, which I think is impossible because I can't even get cell phone reception at the beach where I live, and yet these guys are plotting the end of the world from caves, and Osama bin Laden must have a better service than AT&T because mine's just junky. And of course he's dead too, but anyway, he's just fun to use in jokes. So what do we do? Where do we go? What's you guys come to people like me for answers, and I try to provide them when I can. And I'm telling you, I had a lady come up to me and say, she said, well, you predicted the Republicans to win in 2007. Or, in 2007 you said the Republicans would win. And I said, well, it ain't over yet, baby. Wait to see what happens next week. And at the same time, I preface that by saying, I can't believe, so here's part of a prophecy that was right and part that was wrong. I can't believe that that next year, by the time the election occurs, there will be such economic chaos with collapses in the stock market. And I said this on Coast to Coast. I think Mr. Norrie's become probably the most famous for not only being rude to me, but laughing in my face and then having all my stuff come true. Where I said the mortgage housing rate would be, the repo rate on houses would be up to 70%, where it's about at now. That we'd see oil at $150 a barrel. That we'd see the stock market down below 9,000 or so. I said all this on the radio months and months and months ago, and only to get the response of, ha ha ha, oh Sean, I have you on because you're crazy. And I'm not so crazy now, am I? Because here we are. H.G. Wells, at his 70th birthday, I watched a fantastic documentary on like the History Channel or something. H.G. Wells on his 70th birthday. They asked him, H.G., do you have any words? You're 70 years old. What have you learned? Do you have any words for us? Make a toast. And H.G. Wells raised his cup to this whole group of people who are all his admirers, and his exact words were at this toast. He says, everything that I have foretold has come to pass. God damn you all. I should have put that on his tombstone, because I'm standing here saying, everything that I foretold has come to pass. Not goddamn you all, but goddamn all of them out there. And I can say that. May God damn them. I mean that personally, because that's what's going to happen. They're going to go through the damnation of what the financial collapse is going to be like. And I also said that the revolution was going to begin not in the inner city, not amongst the proletariat, not amongst the poor. The revolution was going to begin when the middle class began to lose their stuff. And when they started losing their houses, and they stopped losing their 401ks, and they start using their stock portfolios, people are finally going to get mad. And, it's very difficult to get middle-class people angry. I mean, it's what do they do? Tip over latte machines at the Starbucks or something to riot? It's a hard thing to do. But here in New York City, it's easier because you're a community. You're an actual city. Los Angeles isn't really a city. Los Angeles is like 88 crappy little towns all kind of shoved up against each other. It's a freeway because you couldn't build a building more than 13 stories tall in Southern California up until like 1959. But here, you actually have a core route where you can meet with people. In 5 minutes, you can get on the phone and be at a coffee shop talking about politics. And there's a wisdom and a knowledge and a swimming in information here that you simply don't get anywhere in the country, which is why this is kind of the elite, the intelligentsia of what's going on in the world. And it's really a shame that New York has been so, I don't know, marginalized, I guess, as far as we just all think, in the rest of the country, oh, that's just New York, they're just all nuts there. And, it's kind of like the Fox Noise network that is kind of just sort of cordoned off New York as like you're a foreign country or something. By the way, I'm not sure if you know this or not, but Fox, F-O-X, comes out numerologically as 666. I don't know if you know that. F is 6, O is 6, X is 6. Isn't that interesting? So, yeah, try that sometime. So when they talk about breathing life into the beast and people shall follow the beast, F-O-X, that's Fox. Fox Noise with Bill the Clown O'Reilly. Although I do think that if anybody watched South Park, because I think that if Eric Cartman and Timmy grew up to have a television show, it would be Hannity and Combs. Don't you think? Don't you think? God damn it, everybody listen to me. Timmy, Combs, Democrats, no, now Republicans. Sing Heil. Exactly, right? You'll laugh at that later. So, so where do we go? Let me tell you. I mean, let me give you this much for free as to what's going on, because I try to always give you guys information that I think will benefit you. And in the workshop, because I don't have the projector set up here, but I will show you a series of charts in the shop. So if you're interested in the market or the economic future, I will show you a series of what we call E-signal charts and Fibonacci wave curves that show you what the potential for what's going to happen with the market in the next couple of weeks is going to be. It's terrifying. It's terrifying. I saw him, and I had a trader. I have a friend of mine, a guy named Clay, that does these. He lives in a cave, literally. He's a monk. He doesn't watch the TV. He made a comment. He goes, you know, I didn't watch the TV. I didn't read the newspapers for 3 years. And then I came out of that, and I read a newspaper, and all they did was change the date. The news was exactly the same. I think there's only 50 newspapers in the world, and they just change the stories around and just put a different date on, don't you think? Because if you go out to a desert island, and you're Robinson Crusoe, or you're lost, or whatever, you come back 3-4 years later, it's the same stories. We're still bitching about the economy. We're still bitching about politics. We're still bitching about, you know, whatever else. And all they do is just slap a different date on it, and, you know, there you go. So here's a guy that lives in a cave, and he says, I don't watch the news because I don't want it to influence me. And he does Forex trading. You know, foreign exchange does currency trading. And so after getting these charts, these A-single charts that this guy's done, holy God, I just looked at this and I thought, I mean, there's the potentiality on this chart that the stock market goes to nothing. Goes to like 1,000. I mean, I know as outrageous as that sounds, goes to 1,000 or 1,500 at the bottom of this chart, and we'll see what happens. Monday, and we will see, is going to be a huge crux point. Monday and all of next week. Now, remember, October 1st, as far as I'm concerned, October 1st was the beginning of the fiscal year. We just entered the year 5769, I believe, in the Hebrew calendar as well. We just entered another cycle of 7 that the Kabbalistic rabbis are saying that this is the next cycle of 7 of the war of Gog and Magog, which is basically Germany, Russia against the Middle East. And let me tell you all the prophecy that's coming down about next week. Let me just give you a rundown and an example. Number 1, you have a group called Destiny Publications that publishes in my opinion, one of the best versions of the Bible, which is called the Farrar Fenton Bible in modern English. And Destiny Publications is now saying, and they are of the belief that the 10 tribes of Israel, that when Jesus came to preach to the very small group of Jews that were left in Palestine, one of the reasons why he sent apostles out to Europe and Asia Minor was because he believed that the lost sheep, my lost sheep that he made such a big deal about, were scattered across the world through the Caucasus Mountains and through Asia Minor. They claim, through their prophecy analysis of the Bible and the mathematics of it all, that as of Monday and next week, that this will be the end of the exiles for the true children of Israel. Well, that's all of us, really. The true children of Israel is the DNA that has been spread all across the world from the original 12 tribes of the Old Testament. When Melchizedek took Abram out of the land of Ur in Chaldea, changed his genetic code, literally, and turned him from, well, a Chaldean, if you will, to the first of the Hebrews. Now, remember, the last part of the Bible, after the book of Lamentations, is only about 3 tribes. Tribe of Benjamin, Levi, and Judah. So where did the other 10 tribes go? Where did they vanish to? Guess what, kids? It's all of us. The identity doctrine talks about that the true land of God, the true promised land, would be a land that would have 2 shining seas to the east and the west, have a great river to the south, and its northern border would be the top of the world. This is in the book of Joel. Where would that be? Yeah, you think? And why is it sea to shining sea and manifest destiny? You have to understand that prophecy and prophets, thank you, prophecy and prophets has done more to shape the history and politics of this country. That's where manifest destiny came from. That's why we went from sea to shining sea, because it was believed that God gave the 13 colonies, like the 13 tribes in the Bible, dominion over this land to be the light to the rest of the world, to be the new holy land that would be prepared in the wilderness. That's here. So Destiny Publishers is saying that coming up this week is the end of the exile, that we will return to our true selves, return to the true lands. That's number 1. Number 2, the Kabbalistic rabbis are now telling us that the next phase of war with Gog and Magog, and they predicted, by the way, to the day, to the minute, 9:30 p.m. on September, don't quote me because I don't have it right in front of me, but I was leaving September 26th of 2001 was when they said phase 1 would begin, 7 years, and that was the day that U.S. troops actually landed in Afghanistan, which I think was interesting. I mean, at the exact moment in time. So this rabbi, who died in 2006 at the age of 108, I believe it was, made these predictions that the next 7-year cycle would happen on Monday, which is interesting, the beginning of this. At the same time, I can tell you that virtually the entire U.S. fleet right now is sitting in the Arabian Sea and is moving back and forth between the Straits of Hormuz. And I'll give you a couple of interesting developments on this. Number one, there was a military exercise off the east coast of the United States, a shallow water exercise that was remarkably enough called by George Bush personally Operation Brimstone. And if you consider that, his grandfather was Aleister Crowley, and he's all connected to Hitler and Prescott Bush and, whatever else, but that's a whole other story. The idea of this is Operation Brimstone was a shallow water practice for blockade. Well, this was with the United States, the British, and the French. The fact that the French were involved was really kind of amazing, but since the French got cut out the first time, where they were like, they didn't help us in Iraq, and then they came and said, well, we would like some deals with your oil, and Bush just said, well, I'm just going to sit here and eat my freedom fries there, Frenchie. You can just go piss up a rope. So they want in this time around if something happens with Iran. So the French, the British, and the United States sent their fleets to participate in this blockade. Well, instead of going home in August, they went right to the Arabian Sea and the Persian Gulf. So they're all sitting there and have been sitting there since August. Bush wanted to call a blockade. Congress said no blockade. The reason was because the Russians and the Chinese threatened and said, if you blockade Iran, we will send Chinese and Russian warships in and we will run the blockade and actually protect Iranian shipping. And Russia's made it very clear that we will consider any actions against our client states like South Ossetia, like Iran, like Venezuela, an act of war against Russia. It was very interesting that the war in South Ossetia happened while Bush was boozing it up at the Olympics. Did you see any pictures of Bush at the Olympics? He was blitzed out of his mind. He was like throwing up on people. He was falling down the stairs. He had this huge gash on his elbow. He's like grabbing volleyball players on the butt. And Putin was sitting next to him at the opening ceremonies while the United States, Georgia, and Israel was attacking South Ossetia. And they cut away from it, but Putin was like in his face, like pointing at him like this. Is Bush is like, what? What'd I do? I didn't do anything. And so by the Russians extending their reach and grasp into South Ossetia, they did a couple of things. Number one, they destroyed a former Israeli base that was going to be used for the attack. We've been trying to get the Israelis to do our dirty work in this for years. That stopped them from making a 3.5-hour plane flight to Iran. That's number one. Number two, they captured a bunch of our top secret drone technology. They tore it apart and handed it to the Syrians and the Iranians to figure out how to defeat it. Number three, by extending their influence into South Ossetia, they forced Bush to put a pullout date on the troops, which he said he'd never do. And now the Republicans have said, well, Bush was saying that troops would start to be pulled out of Iraq by 2009. At the same time, the Russians by saying, well, we're going to protect our interests in Iran, and we will run any blockade that goes down. Meanwhile, Robert Gates, the new Secretary of Defense, he gets in, he goes, I'm not interested in having a war with the Iranians, which made Bush crazy. Admiral Mullins, who came in and replaced Admiral William Fox Fallon, and if you remember, Fallon said there will be no war with the Iranians on my watch, resigned. Mullins went to the Israelis and said, if you're planning another USS Liberty and you're planning on attacking one of our ships and making the Arabs look like it, I know where you live. And the bottom line is the Israelis are backing off. Now, because Ehud Olmert wouldn't do the things that we wanted him to do, we blackmailed him with rape charges and bribery and whatever. Now they have Prime Minister, I can't pronounce her last name, but her first name is Zippy, which I think is very funny. Prime Minister Zippy Livni? No, they pronounce it Zippy, though. It was very, an Israeli said that, like Zippy to Livni. I know, I'm ignorant, my Chinese masters. I don't know who's in there. So the idea behind this is that things have occurred inside the military, inside the Pentagon, inside the E-Ring for our very, very brave men and women. And all I can tell you is that the best and the brightest people who are in the military, who are really concerned with protecting this country and protecting the Constitution at the same time, have basically said, we do not have to take orders from a commander-in-chief that we consider to be clinically insane. And this has been going on since 2006, and this is what they called the General's Revolt, which you read about in Harper's Magazine and the New York Times and whatever else. So in wrapping up everything that's going on here with the political collapse, with what's happening very soon, all I can tell you is that there's two paths now. It'll be very interesting to see, because if there's an October surprise, and I'm saying if, because there are two clear paths, I think Barack Obama is a nexus point, a vortex of what's going to happen in the future. Because the real challenge is going to be, if something happens to Barack Obama, God forbid, but if something happened to him, we all know that there'd be riots in the United States, and a lot of the inner cities would just explode, and it would be a perfect, actual classic war for classic excuse for martial law and a number of ideas. or a number of things to be carried out. At the same time, you have Bush, who's carried out a number of executive orders, and these executive orders have included the 2007 Military Revision Act. And the 2007 Military Revision Act basically suspends what's called posse comitatus. You guys know what posse comitatus is? Yeah. Posse comitatus was passed in the 1880s that forbade the United States to place federal troops within the sovereign states. That's gone. Now Bush has actually recalled 1st Brigade, 3rd Battalion, 5,000 troops from Iraq, and is actually using them as what he calls civilian unrest rapid deployment strike teams, which means now he can put federal troops on the ground in any city to quell unrest anywhere in the United States. What are they expecting at the end of October? The other interesting part about this is what they didn't tell you is that, and you can look this up on YouTube if you want, but Congressman Dan Sherman, oddly enough from Sherman Oaks, Southern California, basically made a YouTube video saying, look, we were threatened as members of Congress. We had Secret Service guys poking us in the chest in the cloakrooms in the halls of Congress saying, if you don't pass the $700 billion bill, we're going to put troops and tanks and guns in the street. We will declare martial law by next week. You watch us and see if we don't mean business. And he said Congress was basically threatened by the executive to say that they would simply use executive orders to declare martial law if the executive branch didn't get the bailout that they wanted. And that's a big deal. That's a big, big deal because as far as I'm concerned, the Republic, as you know it, is no more and ended on October 1st of 2008. God bless America. So, and Ron Paul, I think, was the only one that pointed it out, who said, if you think we're a republic anymore, and if you think we're operating under the rule of the Constitution, you are sadly mistaken. And he was the only person, I think, to pipe up and actually say anything about this. Here's the good news. The good news, let me say one thing, too. If the attack on Iran occurs, or there's an attack within the United States, or there's a terrorist attack or an October surprise, you guys all know that that will put John McCain over the top, and we will now have John McCain as President of the United States. If that doesn't occur, it is most likely that Barack Obama becomes President of the United States, and I have stayed off predicting this. I have predicted every president election since Clinton back in '92. And I have said over and over and over again, I'm not going to make any predictions on this election because it is too volatile. There are too many things in place, and it is literally a door of choice. And I'm not kidding. When I do remote viewings on this and I try to project in the future, there are places that you just can't go. There are giant angels of the Lord who stand in front of you and say, this has not been decided yet. So it's very, very wide open as to what goes down. If Barack Obama gets in, I can also say that destiny is he's not going to be there long. And when I say that, if you look at his chart, if you look at the way things are set up, if you look at what's going to happen with the country, you've got two really interesting astrological things that are happening. Number one, you have Uranus and Pisces at this moment, which is the two fish of Pisces swimming in the liquid thoughts of the subconscious mind, creating chaos. Uranus is the planet of sudden shocks, of chaos, of disorder. And Pisces is the planet of the subconscious. It's one of the reasons why the one movie in this last year, which had a character that was disrupting the government, was disrupting the police, was disrupting the criminal bad guys, was disrupting the hero in the movie. What movie was that? Anybody? The Dark Knight. Exactly. Why? That's the perfect Uranus and Pisces film because the Joker represented the arch nemesis, or should I say the protagonist in that case, of chaos. He was actually creating chaos within all the structured realms. That's what we're seeing. The last time Uranus was in Pisces was 1919 to approximately 1928, which was the Roaring Twenties, the Prohibition, the rise of gangland crime, etc., etc. But here's the biggest thing, and it's generational, and it has the most to do with what's going to go on in New York. Pluto moves into Capricorn on November 27th, and will be there until 2024. Between 2000, it goes retrograde once or twice. Let's call it 2023, 2024. New York is a Cancer city. That means that Pluto, which rules the underground, the subways, pipes, plumbing, water underground, earthquakes, all those things, the Mayan calendar, the Mayan civilization began with Pluto in Capricorn and ended in Pluto in Capricorn. The last time Pluto was in Capricorn was the American Revolution. Stop right this second. Stop right this second. All right, give me 2 minutes to wrap up. Was the American Revolution. That energy from the late 1760s through the 1780s or so is going to begin to manifest itself again, and at the same time, people, once again, are going to start standing up, and that's why I open this, because the clarion call The clarion call for Pluto and Capricorn is going to be, I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore. That's what it's going to be. The ghost of Peter Finch and Howard Beale from that movie Network all the way in the back, where you had Arthur Jensen, played by Ned Beatty, who says, the world is a business, Mr. Beale, that corporations, the nations of the world today are Exxon, Mobil, Dow, all of these nations that the world is run by the immutable bylaws of business. And this corporatocracy is about ready to collapse. And as it collapses, there will be new and dynamic opportunities to form community, to form friendships, to form soulmate bonds between release from bondage that's been happening because of the mortgage crisis, because of what's going on. You won't be bound to those things to take a new society and a new civilization that is not based on the material anymore, but will be based on the concepts of the spiritual and the greatest good for the greatest number. In peace, joy, love, and happiness, may that be with you. Thank you very much. I had CDs and books for sale in the back.